Okay, I hit record, and this is a joint with JP. Hi, JP.
Hello, it's a me.
Were you about to wave and not say anything?
No.
I thought you were going to wave and not say anything. I was
Oh,
going to be like, he's here, I promise. Um,
just absolute silence.
yeah, I was nervous
I'm
because you
just here
waved
with
before you
JP.
spoke, and I was like, oh no, he's not going to talk. He's going to leave me in this weird place where I'm like, he's here. Um, yeah, and so we are
I'm gonna do that
covering
next time.
a craft book, and even though it was my turn to bring a book, you graciously brought a
I don't
book.
think it was.
It wasn't? I thought it
I
was.
don't think so. I don't know. Does it matter?
It doesn't matter, especially when you
No.
do the homework. Um, I do feel like I'm back in school and like the smart kids doing the homework for me. Uh, yeah, and I was never the pretty guy that got the homework done for him. I was always the guy that got the homework done for him because I was like sitting next to the pretty guy and I was like, I'll be a part of this
hmm
too. That's not true. I was actually the guy
I
that
get
did.
that.
I was the guy that did the homework for everybody. That's who I was.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
the nice one.
I was. I went to. Here's a fun story. I was taking the SAT and I went to. I think I've mentioned this probably 1,000 times. I went to a very ghetto inner city high school. And I was one of the few people at the high school that were not a person of color, which meant I got weirdly stereotyped at times in ways that I should not have been, definitely should not have been. And so I went to take the SAT at a neighboring school that was also an entirely black school. And I walked in and sat down at the desk, and this guy that played on a football team opposing me sat down next to me and pulled his desk over right next to mine so he could see my paper. And
All right.
the proctor was at the front of the room. He goes, Jamal, you don't have the same test. And Jamal's like, yeah, that's what you would say. So he just looked over my shoulder for the whole SAT. And I kept telling him, I was like, this isn't going to help you. But yeah, I don't know. I never saw him again, but that's my fun. That's who I was in high school. I was the nerd.
I do I do wish that his SAT was higher than yours just by like one score.
I didn't do very well, so it probably was. Yeah, I was voted by my senior class most likely to invite you to church.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. In fact, there was a senior class play that was done that was mocking the senior class where they tried to include as many, it was done by like the juniors, and they tried to include as many members of the senior class as it represented in the play as possible. And they did have me as a character. And every couple minutes, the guy playing me would walk on stage and randomly invite whoever was on stage to church and then walk off.
And you were watching, you're like, this is like looking into a
I
mirror.
was like, oh, they got me. They know me so well. Actually, back then it was my religious day, so I was like, Jesus, I've served you the right way. Anyway,
They all know.
I am winning. Yeah, that was
Which reminds me, have you seen the movie Heretic? It's pretty good.
maybe, maybe
Oddly, it was good. I
from
just found it very funny
2024.
because,
No, I haven't
yeah,
seen it. I want to. That's
it's pretty good.
that's the one where he
Good
locks
horror
them in the
movie.
house. Does it have
Yeah.
something to do with Jesus and religion?
Yeah,
Oh,
very much so.
oh, I had no idea why it was called Heretic. I just know it's like,
Yeah.
creepy. What's that actor's name? Um,
Hugh Grant,
Oh, Hugh
right?
Grant. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Creepy Hugh Grant. And not creepy because he's talking about like prostitutes, but actually like
Yeah.
playing
He did.
creepy.
Okay. It was kind of funny because he's usually like in this nice role or whatever,
Yeah,
but
he's like
being in
super
an
charming.
evil role, he did really well. I was like,
Nice.
oh, this is pretty
I'm
good.
here for evil Hugh Grant. I'll have to watch
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed I enjoyed the theology little bits behind it and then the kickbacks from the people that were trapped in the house were pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm currently, since we're just talking about random religious things, I'm currently watching The Chosen because my
Oh,
mother loves it. And she's been telling me for
okay.
years that I have to watch The Chosen. And so I am now watching it. I am now slowly very slowly watching through The Chosen under protest because I do have a theology degree. And so I actually have a BA in religion and a master's of divinity.
Ooh.
Masters of Divinity, which
There's
took
an
it.
echo that we
Yeah,
couldn't pay for it,
we'll
but
put
it's
it in
here.
later. I'll
Just
put it in.
imagine that.
We'll put it in
Here you go.
post.
Yeah.
It's a theology degree that takes as long, it took 98 credit hours. It's the same length as a law degree, which is
Ooh, fancy.
unnecessary. And
Well,
yeah, so I've read the Bible multiple times and I have opinions about the Gospels. And this television show sometimes triggers me a little bit. But that's my mom loves it, so I'm watching it.
yeah.
And it's not bad. The storytelling is actually pretty good. Sometimes in season two they get a little excited about their own fame. And there's a couple
Mm.
episodes where I'm like, you guys didn't need this episode at all. You just did this because you, you just did this because you're proud of yourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
anyway.
I get
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Any other religious topics we want to cover while we're on that? This is a weird topic for you and I in Joints with JP. This is a new.
I almost had a religious studies minor. It's not like
I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. I
Nice.
I was like a couple credits away, but because I was going biochemistry, I couldn't do the credit stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like a teaching assistant for religious studies. I had amazing professor. Unfortunately, she passed, but Deborah Majid, she was a I think she was just normal Christian. I want to say she was a nun, but she wasn't. And then she married a man and converted to Islam.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
That's a cool story.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, that's fun. I didn't know that about you. See, I learn new things. We've been friends
yeah.
for like 4 years, and I learn new things about you every day.
Now you know.
Yeah, no, the more you know. Uh,
Little Rainbow,
yeah,
also in post.
yeah. Also, also was a star.
Gotta bring it
Yeah,
back.
yeah, and we're gonna have LeVar Burton come and actually
Yeah,
voice over my part of this podcast in post.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what's gonna happen. Um, I was gonna try a LeVar Burton accent, like,
Don't.
and then I was
No,
like, no, we're not gonna do that.
unnecessary.
That's a bad
Yeah,
idea. That's gonna go
yeah. You're
horribly wrong.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man. All right.
So the book.
What book? We gotta
Have
get
we
that
done
book, or
enough?
Tom's gonna get
Have we
mad.
done enough banter so Tom, stay. I hope you're here.
Oh, he's gone already. Um, yeah. Just kidding. Tom listens all the way through every episode. I don't know why. He like complained.
Now it's a bit.
He complained in like it was like episode like 50 or something, and I've been
Mhm.
making fun of him ever since.
And you know what? I don't blame him.
Yeah, I'm a monster. Okay, the book. What book are we talking about?
We are talking about Zen in the Art of
Mm.
Writing by Ray
S-
Bradbury.
Is it by Ray Bradbury?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
essays from Ray Bradbury.
I thought you were joking. That's
No.
cool. I didn't know. I didn't know Ray
I thought
Bradbury
this
wrote a
was a
writing
made up.
book.
This is not even a real cover. I drew this myself. We're reading a book that's not real.
Okay, if I showed up to one of these and I was like, yeah, the book is called blah 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 blah, and it's by Charles Dickens. Would you put it past me to like actually make up a book and just
At this point, I suppose I thought you didn't even question it when I said it. What are you talking about?
I
Now I'm
didn't
glad I
hear
had the
you
copy in my hand because I feel like you didn't believe me.
I didn't hear you say Ray Bradbury when you said the first title of the when you told me over Slack. I didn't pay attention to who it was by, and now I really want to know what the book's about because I mad
Hmm.
respect Ray Bradbury,
Hmm.
unlike other
Okay.
authors that I've read craft books for who shall
Yeah.
remain nameless. Yeah.
Well, this was interesting because it's a bunch of essays. And so like some of them are essays to the reader, some of them are like reflections, and then
Hmm.
some of them are like just how he got through a certain part of his life, like getting the Mars, the Martian Chronicle stuff.
Okay.
Um so I found good bits in here that are like definitely worthwhile. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. And
fun.
I picked up this book in the basement in where were
Oh,
we? I
I
think
love
we
where
were in
this story is going
Salem.
already. This is great. Okay, in the basement of Salem.
Yeah, I think we were in Salem. I was with Jay and I grabbed this book and Jay went over my shoulder. He was like, "Hey, that's a good book." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I'm buying it now." Because I wasn't even like considering it. But obviously, if Jay told me it was a good book, I was like, "Hey, shit, I
Yeah.
gotta buy it now."
That's Jay Thorne,
It was
everybody.
either it was
To
either
complete
in
JP's name drop, it's Jay Thorne that told him this
Jay
was a
Thorne.
good book.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just kidding.
It was either in actually no, I can tell you where it was at. Max Books. Oh, it was in
Okay.
Cleveland. It was in Cleveland. It was one of
Nice.
Jay's places. I don't
That's
know. I
great.
met Jay a lot, so I don't know where it was.
Yeah.
Anyways, I agree, Jay Thorne. It was a good book.
Nice. That's awesome.
Um, yeah. And so though, like, I was hesitant going into this book, and the first one I got nervous over because here are a couple quotes. Writing is survival. Not to write for many of us is to die.
Wow. Coming in hot.
Coming in very hot.
Coming in hot.
Yeah, it was pretty intense to start. I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm gonna, 100% feel this. And then there was the like daily practice. He brought up a quote that I found interesting. Remember the pianist who said that if he did not practice every day, he would know. If he did not practice for 2 days, the critics would know, and after three, his audience would know.
I'm
Interesting,
sorry. I have to go right now. I
right?
I feel
Um,
I feel horrible. I have to go work.
yes. So
Whew.
very clear off the bat that
Damn.
writing is like a vital life force
Wow.
for our friend Bradbury.
Yeah.
And I think I get it. I mean, yeah, I feel like you have the sense to need to write. It's just maybe not every day.
I have a crushing anxiety about not writing every day. How does
Great.
that work? Yeah. I have a crushing anxiety. When I don't write, at least for like 5 to 10 minutes, my I have crushing anxiety around what if tomorrow I can't do it anymore. That's my
Oh,
anxiety. Yeah.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so then for you, this is true. You might actually just die.
I
Okay,
might
I
actually just
understand.
die. Yeah. But it's
Okay.
not like I might die if I don't do it. It's like it's not like what if I can't do it because I get hit by a bus tomorrow. It's like what
Mm-hmm.
if because I didn't write today, this has been like cramming for a test
Mm-hmm.
and when I wake up tomorrow I'll forget completely how to do it. You ever
Okay.
cram for tests that way? Like you'd like cram for a test and you'd have like all this knowledge about history, but it's only going to
Yeah.
last like 24 hours. And
Oh,
then
mine
like
never even lasted for 24
yeah,
hours.
and then like as soon as the test, you take the test, it is gone. It is
Yeah.
completely gone. I often worry that writing is that way for me. That like any minute
Okay.
I'm gonna stop cramming for the test and it's all gonna disappear.
Okay. All right. Um, that's a lot.
JP, I mean, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, but that's yeah. So I understand. I relate to Bradbury here.
You relate to that
I relate to
vital
the deep
need.
anxiety of like to not write is to die, but not in a, I don't know, does he mean it in a happy way? Because I don't mean it in a happy way.
Um, honestly, as I was reading it, it was a mix between the two.
Okay,
I
because some
think
people are like to not write is to die, and it's like because I love it so much. I wouldn't
mhm.
want to live life
He
without it.
I mean, the whole concept of Zen and the art of writing is by the end of it having this concept of I wouldn't necessarily say like admiration for writing, but he does argue the point of work should be defined as love. And so it is sort of this like more positive approach towards it.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. I do
So,
have a little, I don't know. I don't know if I'm lined up with that or not. A lot of times I'll be like sitting at the kitchen table at like 10 o'clock
hmm
working on something like on my laptop. And my kids will come by and they'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Working." And they're like, "Why are you working at 10 o'clock?" And I'll say, "What else am I going to do?"
right,
And so,
right.
yeah, that I connected that a little bit.
And so like the
I
next
don't know that I love it. I think
I don't know if I love it, it's just the
I
thing I
love
need to
it
do.
like I love eating. Actually, I
Right.
probably like eating more than work, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. I'm gonna stop talking.
Um no, you're fine. This is the whole point of this is. Um then he fell into like talking about writing with zest and gusto.
Okay.
Um And it's sort of like if you are writing without zest, without gusto, without love, without fun, you are only half a writer. The first thing a writer should be is excited.
Okay, well that just feels judgmental.
Are
Are you excited
you
when
not
you write?
excited?
Do you write with
I
zest
am.
and gusto
I don't say that right was well,
every
I don't
time?
know.
Do you write with
I
zest and
don't
gusto
know.
every time?
I don't think like it's 100% zest and gusto, but I
What
think
is the
that,
percentage of zest and gusto that you write with?
well, I'm sorry, I don't have meters right next to me as
I'm
I
at a firm
determine my
like
level.
15 to 20%
15 to 20. Do
zest
you
and
write
gusto.
angrily? Are
No,
you
I
just mad
usually
at the words you
I
put down?
usually write with deep anxiety.
Oh, so it's just like a fear.
Yeah, right with fear and
Great.
trembling of like
Cool, cool,
this
cool.
might go away. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, then maybe Bradbury's approach of, emphasizing joy for writing is not for you.
Yeah. I usually have fun once I get into the middle of it because I'll make myself laugh and I'm like, okay, now I'm having a good time. But I wouldn't
He
call it
does
zest and gusto.
he does also say that powerful emotions from love, hate, and indignation can fuel compelling stories. So I think you're still in
Okay.
there.
I'm still in there. Yeah, I'm in there. All right.
But yeah, I mean like this is when he started to catch me a little bit with this was like this turn into saying like there's something about the writing and it's this joy of writing and I was like okay like we usually get in these uh books about writing that it's like process or something and
Mhm.
to have someone just really try to drill in this concept of having a joy in it and he starts talking about some other pieces within writing that I really started to agree with so I was like okay I'm starting to expect this. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I can actually pull into that. I get I think a lot of times as you know, I'm a big process person, but I think a lot of times the processes can be exhausting.
Yeah. Do you, so when you write, are you writing with speed? Um, are you sort of like vomiting out your first draft?
Um, that's interesting. I don't know how to answer that. How would you answer that? Do you vomit out your first draft?
Yeah, I mean, I put timers to stuff, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. So you are like ready, go. And then you're like
yeah.
Jim
But
Carrey in Bruce Almighty where he's like with his
yeah,
finger on the typewriter. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean I do a massive amount of planning and dreaming before I ever sit down to write. So
Mm-hmm. Same.
yeah, so like right now I'm editing the last screenplay I wrote and I'm planning the next one that I'm writing at the same time. And so tomorrow, well, actually tonight probably, I will start intentionally trying to dream scenes that I need to write.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not actually going to write it for another like 5 or 6 days. So when I
Yeah, so you
sit
need it
down,
to percolate before
yeah,
you actually put words to it.
but when I sit down to write it, it is speed because I actually know what I want the scene to be by the time I write it.
Yeah, because he's all about writing with speed and honesty.
What is
So,
that? What does honesty mean?
so luckily I made a big list of all of the quotes that I
I'm
highlighted
sorry.
in
I'm
this
just
thing.
asking you random questions. What
No,
is
I'm
that?
all
But I don't know what
prepared for
that
them.
means. What
I'm
writing
prepared
with
this time.
honesty? What is that? Does
So,
somebody write lies? I mean, I tell lies when I write.
so the quote I pulled was the faster you blurt, the more swiftly you write, the more honest you are. So it's all about the with speed, you're not hesitating because in hesitation there's thought. And so when you're quick about it, there's like a truth to it.
Who are you being honest to?
I don't know.
Like the muse? Like what are you being? What are you being honest
He
to?
talks about the muse later, so I'm sure it's the
Okay,
muse,
I
but
guess
it's
you're
the
being
I think
honest to
it's
the
the
muse.
idea of when you pause and when you hesitate, then you're not getting that like raw first draft that has all of the pieces behind it. Because a big thing he starts talking about is mimicry and how like to get to your true and authentic voice, it's sort of like write a lot and write fast. And I think that that's sort of his like mindset. And it's the
Oh,
more that you're able to get into that state of writing quickly without having that stuff or having to think about it, the more you're going
gotcha.
to get closer and closer to your voice.
So he's probably heavily influenced by Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. He's just trying to get to his 10,000 hours as fast as he possibly can.
Uh, Probably, or the other way around.
Sorry.
um,
Yeah, no, I see.
but
I kind of see what he's saying though, and like, hey, write as fast as you can, to get as much out as you can because probability wise, which may not be the word that he used, the more you write, you're sure to find a nugget in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
And
sense. Yeah.
then his first tip kind of that he gave, because these are all essays, so part of it is like talking directly to you, part of it is just like what he does,
Mhm.
and then part of it is just like how he grew as an author. But he makes these lists of titles, and they're just like long lists of nouns, and so it can be like the skeleton or the fence, or and so he'll spend a period of time and make a huge list of these nouns, and then when he like looks at one, he sort of goes and he creates the short story off of that. And so like this is part of his process, or at least it was when he wrote this, was that he just makes this huge list, and then that list becomes sort of the compass as to who he is as a writer, because at the time these words are coming from
Mm,
like the air around him,
the
and it's
ether.
sort of
Yeah.
like can become his own voice. So I thought that
Fascinating.
was it's a fun process I'll never do, but
I love
it's
that. I used to do
fascinating.
crap like that. Like I used to write when I first started writing, I was really obsessed with like I'm gonna do a short story every night. I used to roll dice. I'd pull up the Wikipedia page for the Grimm's fairy tales. I'd roll dice and rewrite whatever fairy tale
Oh,
the
yeah.
number landed on. Yeah,
That's
so
fun.
or I'd use a random number generator because I think
Mm-hmm.
there's like 300 something of them. So I'd use like a
Mm-hmm.
random number generator, and that was fun. But so I'm all for that kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
let me force myself to randomly brainstorm from this existing thing. So write
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I can see how it works. It's just if I write anything down, I lose it immediately. I have notes everywhere around me that I will
Yeah.
never know what they mean.
Well, we're also talking like pre-computer, right? Like Bradbury's
Yeah,
like on a
definitely.
typewriter. Yeah.
Definitely.
He's like longhand and then on a typewriter. He's definitely not asking Chat GPT for a list of nouns from the ether.
Give me nouns, please.
Yeah. And then pick one of them for me to write a short story on it. Write the short story of 2,000 words on the noun ether. Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Um,
I'm done for the day.
but yeah, so that was sort of his like first nugget, and then he started talking about the muse, because
Okay.
he's very much into feeding the muse.
Ooh, how do
Um,
you feed the muse?
so you read poetry every day of your life.
Poetry. Really? Ray
Yes.
Bradbury said read poetry?
Hmm.
Man, that is
Every day.
surprising. That's
Are you actually
exciting.
shocked?
I am. I didn't know
Oh,
he
I
was into
thought you were
poetry.
just being sarcastic.
No, I'm
Yeah, no.
serious. I'm
He's
so surprised.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so read poetry, find books to improve your color sense, your sense of shape and size in the world. So this is like essays. And
Wait,
then read
say that.
authors.
Wait.
So basically
Find
read
books to shape your color sense. You have to break that down.
no,
You can't
find
just
books
say
to
those words.
improve your color sense.
That doesn't make it better.
I read it slower. Um the way that I interpreted this, and the improve your color sense and your sense of shape and size in the world, is to read like essays that talk about how to perceive the world in different ways that you can then use as descriptive language for your way of writing, right?
Okay. Okay. So it's not a like I thought originally you were saying like color sense is like the aura that we carry around. And like shape
I've
and
no, I mean,
size in the world is like
again,
the perspective of who we are in the existence of the world.
I read it one specific way.
All right.
I don't know if he meant it that way, but in the passage or in the section, it definitely felt like read essays to basically improve your craft and improve the way in which you speak. And
Okay.
it flowed around the same region where he was talking about reading authors who you like and you hope to write like, and then also reading authors who you don't like and who you like don't want to write like, because you need to figure out where your voice is within that. And so it's not just like read
Oh,
only the things you like, but also the things you hate so that you can understand why you hate them.
interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I actually love that advice.
Yeah.
I
And
think too much we read just like what we like, like what we enjoy, and we
hmm
don't push ourselves to read weird things, things that
yeah.
are
And
weird to us.
he was very big on like find the poetry that moves you
Hmm.
instead of just read poetry. It was like read poetry that moves you, that you can feel the way that the pace and the rhythm is being said and that like you
Interesting.
have a drive towards. So he was definitely like clear about that too.
Interesting.
Um, but yeah, it's sort of like train yourself by reading and then have like repetitious exercise. Imitation is a good example. Um, and it's a good place to like maybe keep the muse. But then he does talk about why you want to write as fast as you can to sort of get rid of that imitation style.
Okay. I love that advice. I think that's great. I mean, it kind of goes against our like write fast, publish, repeat
Yeah.
urgency
Yeah.
that
I
exists in
also
today's market.
liked his focus because the advice for what to do to feed the muse was first to read poetry, and then it was essays, and then it was read others. And I think that that's a good order because I think that I mean he was a short story and long form writer, but yet he still read a lot of poetry, and I think that there's some value to that that we miss out on. I love going to listen to beat poetry and going to listen
Hmm.
to other people read their works because there is a certain flow and rhythm to it, and I can see the way that they're using words that I can then transfer over into longer form. And I think
Yeah.
we miss out on that a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying this to be like, aren't I awesome? But I have been reading a lot of poetry over the last year, mostly because I met
hmm
Ed, who comes on the podcast once every three
hmm
months to teach me a poem.
Yeah,
And
I do listen to your
yeah,
podcast.
I don't know. I never assume. I feel like you get enough of me as it is.
Yeah.
You're like, I get enough of you. So you're always like, yeah, I listened to that bonus episode. And I was like, why? So don't you get enough of me
I'm
already?
curious about your life, Jeff.
Um, yeah, so anyway, I have been reading a lot of poetry, so it's interesting. I just didn't connect it to my fiction. Like for me, I was
Yeah,
just reading it for like self-edification. Like
yeah,
poetry is something I feel like I need to conquer because I used to hate it as a kid. So mostly because I was dyslexic, and when you start making words in weird order on the page, I'm like, all right, this is already this is already hard for me. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So anyway.
I think I mean, like for me, what I would want to do more of is listen to poetry being spoken
Hmm.
because I want to, I would love to see it like on a screen and watch someone perform it and sort of see how they interpret their own work. Um, I don't know like if I would do that with everything, but there is such a delight that I have when I hear poetry being spoken that is different than just reading it.
It's helped me to read a lot of one author at a
hmm
time. So like
hmm
I got this anthology at Barnes and Noble that was the complete works of Langston Hughes, and it was like 1,000 pages. And I spent like 7 months reading every poem Langston Hughes had ever written. I felt like by the end of it, I could kind of hear his voice in my head. I
hmm
was like, I can't replicate his voice, but I could hear his voice in my head, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want people thinking like Jeff thinks he writes like Langston Hughes. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Never, I never would. But I could hear like there was kind of a rhythm to reading it where I was like, okay, I think I get how this is supposed to sound. But I had to read a lot of it. When I first
hmm
started reading it, I was like, it sounds like I would be saying these words, and these aren't words that I would say in this order. So it was like weird. Does that make sense? You kind of get into a
Yeah,
trance
yeah.
around it.
Like
Yeah.
you see, yeah, you see that it just doesn't work for
Yeah.
you.
And I get what Bradbury says. So I could see how, like, if you're reading poetry every day, intentionally reading it to, like, kind of absorb the language of it, I could see how that could really help you become, like, Bradbury's kind of poetic science fiction
hmm
approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
No, well, we didn't even talk about
Better
reading
be.
nonfiction. Do you read nonfiction to inform your world?
Sure. Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
like essays and stuff.
I I need to read more things.
Okay.
I basically put too much time in certain things that have prevented me from reading enough.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I do a lot
Yeah.
of I guess I listen to more podcasts than I do read nonfiction nowadays.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm
I listen to a
obs
lot of podcasts.
yeah, I'm obsessive with like history podcasts. Like I just got turned on to The Rest is History and I listen to like they have like 400 something episodes. And
Hmm.
so I'll go like find like, oh, there's a 7-part series on this one battle in the French Revolution. I was like, no, I'm gonna listen to 7 hours of this. Like, yeah, so it's I do a lot of that weird stuff. I don't know if Bradbury would count that or if he'd be like, no, that's cheating.
It's whatever it is. Like I've been really obsessed with like there's that one subscription I have to Dropout TV, which is a lot of like improv comedy, but they
Yeah.
also do a lot of behind the scenes stuff as to
Oh,
like why they chose to show what they showed and what thing like so I get to see how they structure their storytelling, but it's all in visual media. And like Wheel of Time, I just like binged a ton of behind the scenes stuff because
interesting.
again, it's informing like how people are making creative decisions that end up on the show. And so like it's the same but different. I guess
Yeah,
I've just
yeah.
been like that's sort of where my head's been at recently.
Gotcha. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll stop interrupting you.
Okay, are you ready? This is the like Bradbury this is like the Bradbury challenge that people talk about, but this is
Oh,
the quote. I wrote 1,000 words a day. For 10 years, I wrote at least one short story a week. On Monday morning, I wrote the first draft of a new story. On Tuesday, I did the second. On Wednesday, the third. On Thursday, a fourth. Friday, the fifth. And on Saturday at noon, I mailed out the sixth and final draft to New York. And then on
man.
Sunday, brainstorming.
I mean, come on. That what so wait, did he not write on Sunday because he was nearing death
I,
then?
well, I also brainstorm, but also religious.
Sorry. Um, yeah, no, wow. That's intense.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. How do
Um,
you feel about that?
I know, I know Jay did this one year. Jay Thorne wrote a short story every week, because this was like the Bradbury challenge thing, and I think it
Huh.
that exists somewhere. Will I ever do this? Absolutely not. But I mean, 1,000 words a day, but writing the first draft of that story on a Monday and then just rewriting it over and over again. So 1,000 words a week. I mean, I'm over that doing the chapters for,
Yeah.
but you can see here, like he'd done the short form of that, right? So
You know what does it? It's not the amount of writing that surprises me. Because like I said, when I
yeah,
started writing, I was cranking out like 2,500 words a night. Now, I wasn't
yeah,
ever editing any of them. I was
yeah,
writing them and immediately posting them to the blog because I didn't know any better. Because like this is what you do. But I so it's not the words. What impresses me is the shipping it. The
yeah.
like,
It's a full and complete story.
yeah, the like writing, editing 3 times, and then shipping is what impresses me. That's
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, damn, that's a complete work a week for
yep,
10 years.
yep.
That's a
10
lot
years.
for 10
That's a
years.
lot.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
520 short stories
Yeah. That's
as math
amazing.
goes.
As math goes, 3,520,000 words if he's doing 1,000 words a day. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's wrong because that doesn't take away Sundays. So
yeah.
you'd
I
have
don't
to
know
take
what you were doing,
Sundays.
but
You'd
yeah,
have
I
to take
just
Sundays
I
out of
just
it.
let you figure that one out.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't math the maths in the math way. Um, yeah, no, that's crazy. So that's the Bradbury challenge. If anybody listening has
Yeah.
done the Bradbury challenge, you'll have to tell us because we want to
Yes.
know. We want to know how that
Do
went.
tell.
Yeah.
Do tell.
Yeah.
But no, I found that fascinating. And like I had written a short story in a week. And it ended up being one of my most favorite short stories that I've ever written. Um, yeah, and I had to write it in a week because I had a week deadline. I was basically
Mm.
asked, and then I had like 3 days of like, what the hell am I gonna write? And then I wrote it within a week.
Nice. Yeah, I think
But
I still remember some of the short stories when I was obsessively writing short stories. Maybe I need to do that again for a year. When I was obsessively writing short stories, I still remember some of them I wrote. Like there were some of them I really liked.
Yeah.
Most of them were garbage, but there were some of them that I really enjoyed. And so, you know, his like volume question, I think, can produce solid work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's very much about like sort of that quantity helps to improve your quality.
Yeah. 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 Which I can't deny. I think that's true. I
Right.
mean, I don't know.
Right.
I wouldn't argue with that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so then going back to the beginning of that process where he did the nouns, because that's where everything sort of starts.
Hmm.
Um, he would put these words down, then he'd rummage his mind, describe, personal nightmares, fears, from childhood and shape stories from those. And then he would basically begin and all the words would fall out. So that's sort of like he would go back to the sheet of
Hmm.
nouns and he would pick from there. And that's where he would like pull up his own like fears and shape them.
I love it. Everybody's got to have a system. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's perfect.
You do you.
Um, you do follow
I'm
your
not
dreams, man.
interested in making a list of nouns, but that sounds, if somebody does that, more power to you. That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Um, yeah. Yeah. It is what it is. Uh, Self-consciousness is
No.
the enemy of all art.
Oh, that's personal.
So this was all about like in this section he was talking about warning against overthinking and editing too soon and stressing that instinctual writing is the key to genuine storytelling.
So he relates self-consciousness with editing.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. Is that what you
What are your
relate
thoughts there?
self-consciousness with?
No, because like I think because I do the serials and I have a chapter of the entire story that by the end of the week has been outlined, drafted, and edited, and then gets put into the bucket. Like, I view the whole process as just sort of like natural. There is a part, I, there is a part that, like, if I edit too soon,
Hmm.
from the draft and I'm unhappy, I've had to throw that chapter away because I'm just like that's not a good chapter. Like I there's a point where I catch myself like if I've started editing too quickly and I feel like there's something wrong but I can't put words to it. When I take a
Hmm.
step back, then I'm almost like this doesn't even fit anymore and I have to throw it out. So
Interesting.
maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Fascinating. I mean, for me, self-consciousness does not. I have to like something to edit it. And so like self-consciousness, like that's why most of my work goes unedited, not not edited. Because I mean, and, yeah, I mean, people who've listened for a while know this, but I spent years literally hating my writing, hating
Hmm.
because I was very self-conscious about it. And I would like say like everything I wrote was garbage, and it wasn't. People would like it. I'd have like all 5 stars on a book and have like 65-star reviews on a book, and I'd still be like, this is a garbage book. And then one person would be like, I didn't like what you did with the gun. And I'd be like, see, there it is. It's
Yep.
total garbage.
Proof right there.
This
Yeah,
is
no, I totally
this
get that.
person is totally right. And so, but that didn't cause me to edit more.
Hmm.
That caused me to abandon projects. Like I have 2 unfinished series because I was so self-conscious about my writing, not because. So I don't know. I don't know that I line up.
I wonder. That's almost why I wonder if like the serial method negates that because I don't get a choice.
Yeah,
Like,
no. Yeah.
well, once it's out, it's out. I'm like,
When we were working on Nerds, I loved it because it was like I could
yeah,
write a draft and then send it to you to fix, and I'd be like, I don't have to think about this ever again.
yeah, and
It
it's
feels
out.
really good.
So we'll
It's like I
fix it
don't have,
later.
yeah. And it's like I don't have to even decide if it's good or bad
Right.
because it's gone too quickly. So I don't have to like
Yeah.
ponder. Yeah, like I wrote. Yeah, I hate talking about my own work, but that's what we do when we get on this, right? I wrote
What
that
what else are you going to talk
screenplay.
about?
I don't know. It's somebody else's work. I wrote that
Shut up.
screenplay. And see, I'm self-conscious right now. I wrote that screenplay in February, and I was really happy with it. I was like, man, this was fun. This was a great story. I loved it. It took maybe 3 days for people to get into my head and for me to be like, it's because I finished it and I was like, man, that was fun. I'm gonna like edit it and then put it in a contest or something because that sounds good. And it was literally like 3 or 4 days of talking to people who are like, yeah, writing screenplays is really hard. And me being like, well, that wasn't hard for me. So mine must suck. And all of a sudden I was like, you know what? It's probably garbage. It's probably a total garbage screenplay. But then I read it again this week. I just did another draft of it and I was like, no, it's not garbage. I like it. It's fun. It's funny.
Yeah.
So there's like, I think self-consciousness, I go the other route with it. When I'm self-conscious, I abandon work and I don't
Hmm.
actually give it a chance to be something. I throw it away. I don't edit it more. But I guess he's saying that like if you're self-conscious, you never publish it. You just keep like editing it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, quote wise, it's the enemy of all art. So I think the enemy in terms of you abandoning it, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I do think there's something in I think writers to say you're going to create something that you hope people are going to love purely from your imagination requires at least a half cup of narcissism.
Yeah,
At least a half cup.
at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Whatever.
To be like, no, no, I can do this. I can write a story that other people are going to potentially love requires you to be a little bit of a crazy person. Yeah.
Yeah. I think someone was asking like why or whatever, and it wasn't just me at the table, but like some people just write out of spite.
Yeah.
I write out of spite. I think I've said this story a ton of times, but basically, like when I was forced to say that I don't want to write, when I felt like I had no time to write, but it was a stupid exercise where they made you switch I don't have time to I don't want to. It pissed me off so much that I was like, because you made me say this, I am going to never make this be a thing that I say ever again.
That's
So
really
it's
funny.
like that's my spite, and I will die on that hill.
That's hysterical. That's really funny. My wife is that way. If I want her, if like I really want her to do something, I tell her that it's going to be impossible for her to get done. And then she's like, no, it doesn't do great things for our relationship because as she's like, oh, I'm going to get it done. She's also like, and you can suck it. And so, so
Hmm.
like, it's
Hmm.
not great, but that's really interesting. No,
Yeah.
I don't think I write out of spite. I write out of, I write out of terror and
Anxiety.
desperation. Yeah.
Yeah. Fear.
Yeah. I write out of like, if I don't write, my kids might not go to college and I might lose this.
Hmm.
To be fair, I didn't write anything till my mid 30s. So the idea that I lived life much longer without writing things until I until I lived a life as a fiction writer.
Yeah.
Why were you looking in
I
the
had to
air? You
think.
don't know how
I
old
had
I
to
am?
think of when I started writing.
I started writing 10 years ago when I was 36.
I
Yeah.
started publishing things. Uh, was it 2018, 2019? So 7 years ago.
Hmm.
I was 28.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think most people I talk to, most writers I talk to are like, no, I've always written or I've always wanted to write. I think
Hmm.
that's the more common narrative. Yeah.
Yeah. I had bouts where I wanted to write, but then I was met up with other opportunities or that like voice in your head that like writers don't make any money, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Which, then I just went into the sciences.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
dyslexic as a kid and literally believed that writing was the devil.
Oh,
And
well.
so that's why I didn't write until I was in my mid 30s. I didn't even consider writing until I was in my mid 30s. I was like, writing is for people who see letters in the right order, not for me.
Fair, fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. Well, I've taken us on a
No, no, it's
giant
fine.
tangent, but
Yeah,
that self-consciousness thing kind of threw me a little bit there. Yeah,
yeah, well,
my fault. My bad.
two more points. The end of the book with the intersection of Zen and writing.
Oh, okay.
Um, we had already mentioned this quote, but I like the way he worded it with quantity gives experience, and from experience alone can quality come.
Fascinating. Do you agree?
Yeah. I do. I think that the only I think that this is a big thing and a big hurdle that some writers need to overcome at first
Mm,
is that the more that you write, the better your writing will become because
mm,
it is if you strip it down to its base function, it is just like any other thing. It's like working out, it's like training yourself. Um, Even in the arts, yes, there are people who may have these quote unquote natural talents or these natural eye for things, but
mm.
if you don't train that muscle on how to do what you need to do in illustration and all of those pieces, then the quality won't be there. It may come in bouts. It may be sometimes really great pieces of work, but then, you trail off, but the consistency of quality, I think it comes with quantity.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of that like sports, and it's like because my kids all have wanted to be athletes, but we do not
Hmm.
have the appropriate genetics for that. Unfortunately, their father is very slow and just 6 feet tall. So the chance that they're going to be like now, my daughter does play a lot of sports, which I'm always really confused by. But the chance that they're because she's a really good athlete, but the chance that they're going to be like in the NBA is very small. And so we have conversations around like, look, everybody can be a good basketball player if you work hard enough and you like train hard enough. You can be a good basketball player. Not everybody can be LeBron James.
Hmm.
There are LeBron Jameses. Now, LeBron James isn't LeBron James because he just showed up one day and was LeBron James. He worked
Right.
really, really hard to be LeBron and continues to work really, really hard to be LeBron James. But you can be good. You may never be him. So like, it's about living to the top of your abilities, not the top of
Yeah.
everybody else's. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is being from an essay from Ray Bradbury, who claimed that for 10 years, every week, he wrote a short story.
Yeah.
So you're talking over 500 short
Yeah.
stories, but we still know him as a household name for
Fahrenheit
collection.
451. Yeah.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
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 So,
All summers in a day. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah. Did you ever read this? This is a little bit of a side thing. Did you ever read that um is it David Sedaris or is it BJ Novak? I think it's BJ Novak. It is BJ Novak. He wrote a collection of short stories in one of them the hare challenges the tortoise to a rematch. Have we talked about this?
No.
Because the Harris is pissed that the reason he lost to the tortoise is because he didn't train and he gets this massive
Mm.
cramp at the beginning of the race, and so the tortoise ends up winning because the hare's like injured and can't run the race, and then everybody celebrates and they start walking around going slow and steady wins the race, slow and steady wins the race, and the hare's really pissed off, and so he goes on this big manipulation campaign in order to get the tortoise to run a rematch. And
Hmm.
finally, he tricks the tortoise into thinking like, "Oh no, you have a chance against me in a rematch. You really should." And then the hare trains really hard, and then he like kicks the tortoise's ass. And the parable at the end is it's like slow and steady wins the race till truth and talent claim their place.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
so it's this like idea of like, it's the LeBron James idea of like, hey, you can be an amazing writer. You can work really, really hard. You can come to the top of your potential. Try not to compare yourself to the truly greats because
Yeah.
it's just going to depress you.
Yeah.
Just enjoy what you're doing, man. Yeah.
I
You
like
could
it. I like it.
you can get if you work really hard and write 1,000 words a day for 10 years, You can become an incredible writer, an amazing
Yeah.
writer. Will you become Toni Morrison or James Baldwin? Probably not, but you could be an amazing writer. Yeah.
Well, that's a little dark, but yeah,
These are the
yeah.
myths I have to tell myself, man. I have to be like, will I be Stephen King? Well, I might. Well, sorry, shots at King. Will I be Ray Bradbury if I write as many short stories as he does? I'm probably never going to produce a Fahrenheit 451. It's just not going to
You
happen.
never
But,
know.
I'm pretty sure. But will I be better than I am now? Absolutely. Like, without question. Yeah. Will I be a better version of myself? And is that a good enough goal? Yes, like
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, just affirming. Like,
That
yeah.
was one fun thing in the essay. He was talking about he wrote for Fahrenheit 451, then there was like a stage play for it, and they wanted to expand on a character and their decisions in it. And it was such a like a good expansion that
Mm.
he either did or he had always intended to go back and sort of like in a new edition include that in the original. So it's sort of like this your work ever grows and ever changes when it's like brought in front of other people.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we don't share
Um,
our work enough with each other.
no.
I think we need to share it more with each other. Because
Agreed.
I've never shared my work with somebody and not learned something from it.
Yeah.
Like I've always learned something. Yeah.
I figured you'd like this quote.
Ooh, ooh.
Plot is no more than footprints left in the snow after your characters have run by on their way to an incredible destination.
Oh shit, I'm writing that down. That's amazing. That's my new favorite quote. That's my new favorite
Yeah.
quote.
It's
Yeah.
a good one. It's very, and it basically is reiterated several times of this like character driven story and plot comes second to the characters, and I think that that's a big thing for him too.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love his character. I've read a ton of Ray Bradbury. I love his characters. He writes amazing characters. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
And sometimes his plots are like, man, really didn't do anything in that story, but I don't care. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
um okay, so there's this tiny last thing that I personally loved in this,
Okay.
which was his take on commercial versus literary writing. um And he has this quote here: "It is a lie to write in such a way as to be rewarded by money in the commercial market. It is a lie to write in such a way as to be rewarded by fame offered you by some snobbish quasi literary group." Uh, he doesn't really love either end of it, and I love that for him.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was reading with the Dialogue Doctor support team. We just read Stephen King's On Writing. And
Hmm.
he in that says a very similar thing.
Yeah.
He flat out says like if you're writing for money, you are writing for the wrong reason. And
Hmm.
which I thought was harsh. Because I was like, King, dude, people got to eat, yo. But yeah, it was just it's an interesting. It's
Yeah.
very in the face of our current climate.
And like I I appreciate this mindset, and he also goes about talking about how we have the words for literary, we have the words for like commercial writing, but we never have the intersection between the two, the middle way.
Mm.
And um I appreciate that because I've sort of slipped into some of the literary groups nearby and I just don't fit in. And they're like, I'll tell them a story about the very short period of time, as in less than 6 months, where I smoked a cigarette or a few, um, and how why I quit. And they're like, "You have to write that story," and I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna write that as a story. Like that is nothing that is of interest to anybody. It is a stupid, funny little quirk that I'll bring up every once in a while, but like, I'm not gonna write some literary piece for that. That's not who I am." But like it's this sort of appeasing to that group because they have this standard for the way that words are written, and then there's the commercial market of just like write and get money and blah blah blah.
Yeah, it I so first, when we get back to writing season 2 of Nerds, Ethan is 100% trying cigarettes for like 3 episodes.
Listen, college was a stressful time, okay?
I'm totally, he's totally tried cigarettes for 3 episodes. It's gonna be like, what am I doing? Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I, I am, I would like your opinion on this because you know that I rage about things. Um, and I'm not sure that my feelings on the market are appropriate, and I constantly
Hmm.
question. But I'm very frustrated at times about writers' obsessive focus on marketing and on how to sell things and on advertising and their what I would perceive as lack of joy in the act of writing.
Hmm.
Am I being fair to the market?
So I think that the current market, which could always change, but the market that I'm in especially is the TikTok market.
Hmm.
And it's become a very like make a persona and have that market a ton. And there is joy in that. And I think that some people, like, I find a ton of joy when people comment and, like,
Okay.
I have that interaction with people because, like, when something hits off, like, there are a lot of questions that people have, but then they also, like, they talk about how they picked up the book and they're starting to enjoy it. And, like, there's this joy around that I think feeds something. It's maybe it's ego, maybe it's something else, but I think that has a special place for some people.
Okay.
It
That's
doesn't
actually
really
really
take away from
encouraging
my joy.
because I don't think about getting joy in the community being built. I think because classes on like how to sell on TikTok are always about like
Hmm.
numbers and about like, hey, if you
Yeah,
do this, this is how you get engagement numbers. I don't really, and that's part of it is my bias is that I don't want to hear it. So it's not necessarily that people
yeah,
aren't saying it. I recognize that like, hi, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Um, so I like that actually is very encouraging that
right. And
like,
I think that
yeah.
that's the thing that's missed out is the word engagement is is not and understood it's a very surface level because the truth behind engagement is conversation and community and building a connection to people. Because if I'm not marketing, no one else will do it for me. And if I don't start making those connections to people, then those people won't start advocating for me to their people. And
Mm,
so I'm starting to see that where someone will recommend a book to somebody and then they'll end up making a TikTok with that book or talking about that. And so like there is a goal about it and I think that there is an intent about it and I think that it's really tough and it's really frustrating and there could be months and months and months where nothing happens there maybe nothing happens to you at all and it's sort of a luck of the roll and
hmm.
you can only do so much in the space to try and get that attention but when you do there is that ability to create community and that's at least how I approach it is like I am seeking the type of engagement where people are having conversations.
Nice. So I like that because going back to like what Bradbury said, it's not that you are participating in that market simply to make money, which Bradbury would say is lifeless and death,
Hmm.
but you're participating in that market because you're finding community around your writing there that makes you in
Yeah,
the end a
yeah,
better writer, right? Like makes
yeah,
you want to write, motivates you to write more. I love
yeah.
that. That's great. That I will stop being such an old bastard about it then. That's
Good, good. Take that.
yeah. And you got Ashley Otson. I don't know how to say her last name. She's a
Oh yeah.
famous
Yeah. I still
Instagram
don't know how that
comedian.
happened, but that's great. I'll take it.
I've been watching her for years. She's hysterical. And then she had your book in an Instagram reel. I was like, what in the world? Yeah. Anyway, and that brought me joy. So I guess there is joy in it.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thought? I'm also upset. Can we go back to the literary group? Not saying your work is literary enough because you're a really good writer. So
I'm
I don't know what they're doing, but that
it's
I'm
so
offended for you.
I'm gonna say that they never said my stuff was bad. They just said I should be writing this like real world,
Oh my
I don't even know,
gosh.
nonsense, like stuff that doesn't fit with what I like to
Ah,
write and read.
yeah.
Um, I also have a lot of like preconceived frustrations with literary groups because like my college we had a creative writing group and like
Mm,
there was a lot of people who would just like the way they talked was very talked down on in terms of like
that's
commercial
unfortunate.
genres.
Yeah.
And so like it really turned me off from writing in general. But I still gloat because the story that I had written, which was sort of genre-esque, was left with a cliffhanger and all of them were like, what happened? But anyways, that's
Yeah.
that's but because of that experience, I sort of do have a hesitation when it comes to like higher literary spaces. And so
Mm.
it's sort of like it is a detriment to me. And so like I want to read more literary works, but I do have that sort of I don't know, not trauma.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have because I didn't start writing until I was much like in my, you know, until I was an old person. And because I didn't engage in literary groups until like, I had been writing for a while. I never had that experience with them. So I find them fascinating. There is a lot of I don't like what you're describing, which I would say is self-justification through criticism. I don't like
Hmm.
that. I don't like it when people seem to be justifying their own ability as a writer by criticizing other people. That's not cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I the one thing that like gets me all the time, and I didn't mean to cut in, but I will, is
no, no, please do.
whenever people complain about like Twilight, because it always comes up in literary spaces around here, and I'm like, yeah,
Interesting.
but do you know how much money she made? Like, do you know how that impacted people? Like,
Yeah, and not even just the money she made. Like she created a world that people love, that people
exactly.
like love. The money's a byproduct of the fact that she made this
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
I read them. I did. They're
They're
great. Like they're
fine.
fun. The last book sucks, and the way she ends it is terrible. But it's
But people loved it.
people loved it, and who am
And
I
I
to
think
be
that
like,
that's
no,
the
that
most
sucks?
important
Like it
thing.
doesn't suck. It's just not for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And like the important thing there is if it's not for you, but you can recognize that it was successful, pick apart how it was successful and how
Yeah.
you can adapt it to the way that you write instead of beating it down. And it's the same way for any other thing. If you see a TikTok that's exploding and it's about a book that you absolutely hate,
Hmm.
what's about that book?
What
What's
is it?
about the way that they're doing that TikTok? So figure out those things instead of putting up this barrier of them being lesser. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I despise.
Yeah, it's part of what I loved last fall. I did that series of podcast. Well, they're coming out now, but Tom and I did that. You were on one. Tom and I did
I
that series of
was.
episodes for our podcast about books. A major reason I wanted to do that was I was like, there are some of these genres I don't understand, and
Hmm.
I need to read them to understand like what is it about them people loved. And so like I'm not a big romance reader, but we read The Wedding Date with Becca Syme, who is a big romance reader and writer, and listening to her
Hmm.
talk about what she loved about that book, I was like, oh, I get it. I see what
Yeah.
you like. I understand, but I had to go way out of my comfort zone to like read that. Or like The Wizards of Earthsea. I strongly disliked that book, but the episode you were on, but that I think comes out in like 2 weeks. But I do get why people love it after we talked about it.
Yeah. I was the same way. Like
Yeah.
I didn't love it, but I understood how impactful it was.
Yeah. And I get why people would love that magic system. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
get why you like this, you know, weird ass poorly explained magic system. I get why you like I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
okay. So we're just putting a little slight in there. That's
It's
fine. Uh-huh.
it's fine. It's okay. Um yeah, no, I get why people love it. And I think coming to work like that with appreciation is like Bradbury's saying, like reading poetry, reading things in art. our typical thing, I think really does push us, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll often read things that I am not smart enough to understand and just read them over and over
Just
again.
nod along.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, just like listen, like I'll have to read like we just read the dialoguer like community last night read we were talking about James Baldwin's Sonny's Blues. It's a
Hmm.
short story that Baldwin wrote about it's written in first person POV. It's about an older brother whose younger brother longs to be a jazz musician, but becomes a heroin addict. And it's a amazing emotional journey. I had to read it like 3 times because I was like, this is doing things, but I don't understand how it's doing them. And it was like on the
Yeah.
third read that I was like, oh, I see it. I see what he's doing. But I wasn't smart enough to get it on the first time. I had to read it like multiple times to understand like what he's doing with the pacing and how he's like ignoring details that I would probably obsess over, like who he was sitting next to on the subway, and only giving you details that really impact the emotional journey of the reader. And like to a weird extent where like I didn't know that you had a wife until we were like 7 pages in because it doesn't matter. But
Hmm.
I know that your student was whistling this tune from a bird because of the way he's whistling freely. Like, it's just this like, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
going back to Bradbury, that like reading the things that are uncomfortable for us, I think is positive for all of us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a
Yeah.
good thing to do.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty fast to read. It also is a pretty short book. It's, I
Nice.
don't know,
Yeah.
170, 170 some pages.
Yeah. And it's a bunch of
So,
essays you said, so they probably move fast.
yeah.
Yeah.
The last section, which is on creativity, is a ton of poetry stuff. It's not a
Oh,
ton,
fun.
but it's several pages of poetry. And they're pretty good, thought-provoking. All on creativity. Surprise, surprise there on the title of the essay.
Yeah,
But
that's fun though. I love that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good way to end it because it sort of just leaves on that like that beat.
Yeah, and I love the image of Bradbury like sitting because I think I read somewhere that he used to like sit in a library and write.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
I love the idea that he's like sitting downstairs in the library before he writes reading poetry. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, he wrote that he would often go to the library and he said how much it costs to like rent a typewriter and then like how much it
Yeah.
was a week or whatever. But yeah, that was all part of this. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's fun. Yeah, it reminds me of like Kurt Vonnegut like in his like dirty cartoons and just
Yeah, yeah.
like, wait, why is there a man's penis in the middle of this book that's
Well,
drawn by like a 15-year-old? But
well,
you just get this sense of joy that he's like, I'm going to put this in here now.
as
It's
I
fun.
say, follow your dreams.
Yeah, it's great. It's like you can feel the joy coming off the page. It's awesome.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing the book, JP. This was great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Encouragement to read. Any final thoughts?
It's good. I totally didn't even include any of the like life journey stuff that he talked about, which was still pretty a good addendum to it. But I really wanted to focus on like what we as writers could grab from this.
Nice. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
This is great. All right, I'm gonna hit stop and we can talk a little bit more.
Okay.